my first question obviously is your life basically revolve around cricket and reporting about cricket. How are you coping these days, and have you planned anything for the future? Just waiting for it.
No, I'm certainly not planning anything at the moment. I made quite an amazing, with incredible timing. I actually resigned from a full-time job with ESPNCricinfo at the end of January to go freelance,
Yeah.
to do some, other things. And so I left a full-time
Yeah.
job just in time for coronavirus to hit. So yay me, good timing, outstanding timing. So now I did have a lot of things planned. I was about to head off to the IPL and then go to England and cover the season there. So now, of course, that's just all off. So I'm in a town called Orange, which is my hometown in Australia, and they've pretty much locked down all flights, most flights in and out of the country now. So I'll be here for a while instead of being back in my place in England. And I'm here with my mum, and we are pretty much just in a routine of being at home. We go for a walk somewhere where there's no people. We're limiting our trips to the supermarket very much now and just staying at home. So very, very much social distancing and pretty much heading into complete isolation, I think, at this point.
Okay. So let's go back a little. How did you get into sports reporting? How did you get into cricket? And
Yeah, it's a funny thing. My first sort of jobs were just in TV production. I was a director's assistant, and it's a very high stress job that's very much reliant on being able to count backwards. I'm great at counting backwards. Did that quite a lot. So telling everyone you're going to be on air in 10, 9, 8, all of that sort of thing.
okay.
But that was for me. It wasn't creative enough, and I felt that I studied journalism and media at university, and I kind of wanted to be a bit more creative. So I started producing and reporting where I could, where I was given any opportunities. And it kind of just grew from there. I was freelance for a long time and covered mostly, there were two sports that I mostly covered were rugby league in Australia and cricket. So rugby league in Australia is a winter sport, cricket's a summer sport. So I used to flip-flop between them, but then do other sports as well wherever the opportunity arose. So I did a reporting for a golf show, for example, or Superbikes was another one as well that I did for quite a while. So whatever it was, I'd turn my hand to that, and then it just gradually became more and more cricket, which was fantastic. And in the last sort of probably 7 years, it's just been cricket.
So how has been that journey, the cricket journey? How has that journey been?
How, sorry?
The cricket journey how have been the past 7 years been? How have you enjoyed?
Amazing. I mean, I'm incredibly lucky. I've had the most amazing experiences. I have met wonderful people. The best thing about being a cricket journalist is this international family that you have. So I have good friends in Pakistan, like people I love seeing when we cover Pakistan together, like Zanab Abbas and Masha Azad. I'm sure you're aware of those guys.
Yeah.
So we've had
we've all seen your video that. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting. We have all seen that Dil Dil Pakistan video of yours.
I can't believe that. That was so funny. Zanab just decided that, I'm going to get you to sing this. And so yeah, she got me to do that. And I had no idea that was going to go as crazy as it was. It was so funny. It's funny, all the effort that you put into making videos and doing interviews and nice, interesting features and all of this. The two videos that I've done that have been watched more than any other are the Dil Dil Pakistan and then me getting hit on the back by a cricket ball that was slogged by
Yeah,
scouting. Yeah, see, you know this.
yeah,
This is really quite depressing. It's, you can go to, look, all I should do basically is turn a camera on and maybe just fall over and break an arm or something, and then everybody would watch it,
yeah.
basically.
It goes viral. It goes viral. No, the thing is, that song was like Pakistan's second national anthem. Dil
Oh,
Dil,
believe me, I know. But
yeah.
that's why I know the song. I get it stuck in my head every time I do a Pakistan game and it plays in the stadium. I end up having it stuck in my head for weeks afterwards, and I cannot get it out. So it's a great song. I do love it, but it's just very funny. I actually have had people even in Australia, fans at like the SCG, come up and say, can you please just sing Dil Dil Pakistan for us? I've had it in England as well. It's really funny. It's amazing. So the power of music and cricket to bring us all together.
So recently, the T20 Women's T20 World Cup concluded. I obviously follow the game as a fan, as a hobby, and I follow mainly the men's game, but I also follow the women's game, especially when Pakistan is playing. This time, I felt the coverage was more comprehensive, more detailed. Did you get the same feeling?
Oh, unequivocally, yes. It was incredible. The coverage that it got, the swell of support, the interest from around the world. There's never been anything like it. It surpassed so much. The numbers that came out of the ICC
Yeah,
for the digital numbers, even compared to the Men's World Cup last year, were astonishing. It was a huge moment. We keep saying this in women's cricket. It's like, oh, this is a huge watershed moment. Oh, this is a huge, they happen at almost an exponential rate. But this was something completely different. To think that you could end up with, what was it, 86,000 people
yeah,
at the MCG. They were very, very lucky. If that had been a week later, it wouldn't have happened, because by that stage, the
yeah.
week after, coronavirus was really starting to make a big impact, and people were starting to realize, okay, we have to shut these big things down. So 1 week later, it wouldn't have happened. They were very fortunate that they did. But everything about it, the whole tournament, the coverage that was given, I mean, it's not, I remember commentating. The first time I commentated on a game was between Australia and New Zealand women, and I was the only commentator. I did 3 ODIs, back-to-back days, and I commentated for 100 overs a day, every ball, for 3 days in a row. No idea what I was doing. Meg Lanning scored in that a 45 ball 100, which was the most astonishing innings I've ever seen her play. And there was no one there. There would have been maybe 30 people there, friends and relatives, no journalists. And I was the only commentator. I had to drag in players to just come and sit with me and talk. I reckon that was probably about 7 or 8 years ago. So to think you could go from that to 86,000 people in a stadium and coverage all around the world is just absolutely mind-blowing.
So, do you think it's sustainable? Do you think it will grow further?
Yeah, I think you're obviously not going to get those crowds in every country, because not every
Yeah,
country has those kinds of cricket crowds. But I certainly think it's a benchmark going forward. The next World Cup is, fingers crossed, inshallah, as you might say, meant to be in New Zealand next year. They will have smaller crowds, but I think there's a sense now that people want to watch it. People are interested in it all around the world. The coverage has changed too, from being just about, oh, isn't this great? Hasn't the game improved? Hasn't the coverage improved? To people were just talking about the cricket. And that means being critical when it's bad, and saying, I'll give you an example. I certainly wrote a piece about it. The fielding in the World Cup that we just had, the T20 World Cup, was really poor by their own standards. We can talk about that now. Before, it would have been, oh, don't be harsh. Like, now it's, no, we're talking about the cricket. There are more and more professionals. So we need to really discuss where the standard is, what's been great, what's not been great. And that's a real change in the coverage of women's cricket. And I think that's going to be the same going forwards. And it'll become a more attractive broadcast package as well. That's the other thing. That's where cricket makes a lot of money, in
We're getting women
broadcast.
superstars as well. So women cricket superstars now, even in
Yeah,
Pakistan.
absolutely. People have shown they want to watch it. So that's going to make it a more attractive prospect for broadcasters. And that, again, becomes another game changer. It's already happened in Australia with the Women's Big Bash, which does great numbers. It outperforms a lot of sports played by men, like rugby and soccer, but by the viewing figures. So it's already holding its own. And I just think that will grow.
Did you see any of Pakistan's matches in the World Cup?
Yeah, I did. I only missed a few games altogether, so I was very busy. But yeah, I did see Pakistan. They're in a bit of a bind because as are other countries, even say like Sri Lanka, they're very much held up by one player. For example, Sri Lanka in Chamari Atapattu. But along with Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, they're kind of in this group where they're in real danger because of the professionalism that has been pushed in other countries like Australia and England, more so India and even New Zealand, South Africa. The central contracts are of the type, and the developmental contracts underneath them, they're becoming so much more professional quickly that other countries that may not have the money or the focus or the desire to really make women's cricket professional at a domestic level, not just a national level, but it's the domestic level underneath that really pushes professionalism. There's a danger the gap between those top countries and then the next level down could become very difficult to bridge. Yeah, so it's an interesting time because there is some talent there. But it's the professionalism, it's the fitness, the fielding, the power hitting, the strength and conditioning, all those kinds of things where the other countries are in danger perhaps of pulling away.
So yeah, we just recently they got central contracts with the PCB and they started flying first class and stuff. But I think women cricket will probably take another generation because obviously there are a little bit of cultural issues in Pakistan as well. That might take a little while to...
Yeah, that's my understanding, and I can't speak. I'm not there, so I don't know as much. But yeah, I do understand that there are cultural issues, and hopefully the fans might be able to push that as well. Like if the fans show that they want to watch their team and support them and be passionate, and there's that interest there, then sometimes that's what happens. Like even in Australia, when the WBBL started, they only had Cricket Australia were essentially paying for the cost of the broadcast for the broadcaster. They did such good numbers because people wanted to watch them that by the end of the season, the broadcaster was paying to put on extra matches. So this is what can happen.
Yeah.
Sometimes the fans can go, actually, you know what, administrators, we kind of want to support this. And then they go, oh, yeah, okay. And then broadcasters are like, oh, okay. So that can happen as well. So you know, I hope that the Pakistan fans really do support the women as well, because you know, it gives great scope for the sport to grow in all new areas.
Yeah, I think it's in the past probably 10, 12 years it has changed. It's changed slowly, but it's definitely is changing. Another team was very interesting was Thailand. We've never seen a men's Thailand team, but they all, I don't know, they scored 150 against Pakistan. They had a good chance against Pakistan. So do you think women's cricket might take a different sort of trajectory in terms of like Thailand or other places where men's cricket is not so popular and women's cricket can come forward?
Absolutely, and we're already seeing evidence in that. Just a couple of months ago, Brazil announced that they were implementing central contracts for a national Brazilian women's team, which, I mean, that's mind-blowing. Thailand was mind-blowing. The fact that Thailand got there. Don't forget, they beat Papua New Guinea as well to get there. There are a lot of countries where if you've got the athletes, and remembering Thailand a lot of their players came from a background where they played softball or other sports at university, track and field. So they were fit and athletic, and you saw that in their fielding. They were not the worst fielding team by any means at the Women's World Cup. They were generally pretty sharp and put some other teams to shame, I think. So that team, but then the Brazilian thing blows me away. If you're a country, you probably need to have a few people who are passionate about cricket, who want to build it, and who go, right, someone who has some cricketing background and knowledge who can say, right, we're going to do this. Let's attract all the best athletes we can get, show them how to do it, but also make them as professional as we can quickly. There's the Commonwealth Games has got women's cricket on in the next Commonwealth Games again, inshallah, that it will go ahead in Birmingham, which is where I live in England. The spread of that, a lot of us have discussed the idea of cricket being in the Olympics and what that would do for women's sport in particular, women's cricket. So Commonwealth Games may be another step to that as well for other Commonwealth countries that may not have been big cricketing countries to actually, pull together a side. So there's definitely a real opportunity there, I think, to grow the game and we shouldn't just go, it has to be ex-English colonies that play it, maybe think a little bit wider than that. Thailand, Brazil, those countries are really showing that can be done.
Just wanted to tap into your, as a broadcaster experience, cricket commentators, do you guys get a brief as opposed, for the question is, do you guys are told to entertain or are you told to inform, educate? Is there something of that sort going on?
I mean, I don't do a lot of commentating. It's something that because I've been mostly reporting, but then I'll usually commentate on several games a year, and hopefully I'd like to do that a lot more. I've never really had a brief. I'm going to be really honest with you. No one has ever given me a brief to be anything in particular, and most of the time I'm just desperately hoping I don't stuff up, that I don't get players' names wrong. I did 3 Thailand games and I was so stressed about getting those players' names wrong. I was practicing and listening to recordings. So most of the time I don't. I've been very lucky to have had some great advice from particularly people at the BBC, colleagues, and Adam Mountford, who is in charge of BBC TMS, that and colleagues like Charles Dagnall and Daniel Norcross, and some of those guys have been just really helpful in helping me be the best commentator that I can be and to get better all the time. But I can't speak for others who, work for ICC tournaments or whatever, where sometimes things may get a little bit more political, and it can be hard if you're commentating as part of the host broadcaster and you've got criticisms to make. I know some commentators are more strident about doing that than others. I'm lucky. I've never had any pressure on me to mention or not mention anything. I just go and do the best job that I can.
So my question was basically, we get a lot of, we're moving away from broadcasters. Generally, all commentators mostly are former cricketers. So I personally, I've got a small page of my own on. So the feedback I usually get is commentators these days are more trying to entertain rather than telling us what is going on and why is it happening. If a player is, say, Babar Azam plays a cover drive, we know it's a beautiful shot, but what goes into playing that shot, we don't get it. It's an amazing shot and that kind of.
Yeah, I think, well, to be honest, I think that's why it can be really great to have a range of commentary talent and background and experience in broadcast, because and also it can vary depending on the type of cricket. So T20 cricket in particular is much more about entertaining an entertaining product, and I know that they push that, say, for the Big Bash in Australia, or for the IPL, and it's a lot of it is about hyping up the entertainment factor. Whereas if you're watching Test cricket, that's a completely different thing. There's always room for learning about cricket, and I guess it's knowing your audience, who's watching, what you can do. I find some commentators to be really educating and come up with things that I wouldn't have thought of that. I love listening to some talking about field placement. Say like a Ricky Ponting can be really interesting when you hear him talking about various field placings. Shane Warne can be the same. Others, if you're listening to like a Nasser Hussain, can be really good at breaking down what the batsman's doing. Lots of different things. But then also you have your professional broadcasters who keep things online and who can sort of anchor things as well, who might not necessarily be the former players. And you've got people who are just entertaining and fun to listen to, whether it be on radio or whatever. So it's just nice to turn on the radio and hear someone's voice you like and feel like you've got a friend in your living room while you're listening to the cricket. So there's so many different elements, and I think it's great that, you know, you've got, I'm never going to go and commentate and talk about someone's cover drive technique. And that's not something I'm going to do. I would be, you know, but if I'm commentating with a former player, then hopefully, you know, you can draw something out and ask them the right question about what's happening. So, yeah, I think if you get a good team that's balanced, then you can end up with, you know, a great product.
You did a brilliant piece with Cummins recently. So I wanted to ask, usually we see Australian fast bowlers, Dennis Lillee, Jeff Thompson, even McGrath, his pace was lower, but all of these guys were very in-your-face, aggressive. Cummins is a little more reserved, shy. Does he come across the same way in his interviews? Or
I wouldn't say he comes across as shy in his interviews. He's an incredibly polite, very nice man. It always has been. Always, you know, with a smile on his face. He tries to be as honest and as you know, I guess insightful as he can be. He's in fact, one of the things when I did that piece on Pat Cummins, and I was asking him about, you know, the time of Sandpaper and what was happening with the aggression and the way that the Australians were approaching it. And he said to me that there were times he was sort of getting dragged into that kind of way of thinking of that real aggression. But he said to me, he sort of realized that it just didn't work for him. Like trying to get all mouthy and sledging and all that sort of stuff. He said he's better when he really just focuses on what he's doing. It doesn't help him. Whereas he said other bowlers, it helps them to get themselves wound up, you know, to get themselves into a bit of argy-bargy.
Like Virat Kohli. Virat Kohli is a good example, I guess.
He loves the fight. It brings out a lot in him, doesn't it? And that's just different personalities. Pat Cummins is not that sort of personality, and so I think for him, he's happiest when he can just focus on what he wants to do. It doesn't mean that he can't be aggressive, but you know that's just the way he has found it to be.
There's another interesting line in the piece where he said that playing at home was more difficult as opposed to playing overseas because there's a lot more pressure. Does the Australian crowd turn against their own team quickly, or?
No, I don't think that's about the Australian crowd turning. I think so. In Australia, it might be differently. Pakistan is a country that has really, honestly, some of the most passionate fans. I know this from Twitter, that, you know, some of the most passionate cricket fans out there. Australian fans are a bit different. So there are a lot of Australian sports fans who become cricket fans in the summer. So in the winter, they'll follow Aussie rules or rugby league or football, whatever the sport they follow in the winter. And then in the summer, it's like, right now, we're all cricket fans. So when Australia play away in the winter, a lot of stuff goes, it's not likely unless maybe say it's the Ashes or something incredible happening. It won't be on the back page of the paper. It won't be the first thing on the bulletin. You sort of have to go a few pages in to find it. Or it just doesn't, it's not the big story. There'll always be a football story of one kind or another that's bigger in Australia. So when you go and you play overseas, you don't have the same kind, or from Australia, you don't have the same kind of scrutiny. And I think that's sort of what he was because he played so much of his cricket overseas, international cricket, before he ended up playing international cricket in Australia. I mean, it was crazy. So I think that's what he was all of a sudden. But then in the summer in Australia, you really are under the spotlight because it is the big thing in town and it's huge. So it kind of just switches on and off a little bit here. And I think that's what he was referring to about how different it is when you actually come and play home.
That's very interesting. Another thing is he came into the side very early, very young. Then he got injured for 5-6 years. He was out. He could have easily gone the way of like playing 4 over T20 franchise cricket. And he's probably the exception to the rule now. Do you think? I'm not asking you to name names, but do you feel the players generally are interested in being Test cricketers, or is the relatively other option of T20 is more appealing to the players generally?
I think certainly in Australia, I think definitely the majority of players would play Test cricket if they had a chance. They would absolutely play Test cricket. At the same time, they're now lucky that there are other forms of the game that can sustain players professionally. Who probably wouldn't get the chance to play that. And we've seen probably with some players, it may have extended their career. When they get older, you see some players turn to playing more T20 competitions and franchises around the world, which I think is probably more extending their career. There will be some players who maybe find that their talents are best suited towards the short form of the game, and they're happy to take that route. Maybe they accept that at a younger age and go, actually, you know what, I can make a career for myself. And that's great. We want cricket to be as all-encompassing and produce as many good players as possible in all formats. But I do think in Australia, I think if you asked Australian players, a big majority of them would say that they would play Test cricket. If they
So I was just watching the Ashes, the documentary just that came out. I don't know if you have seen that.
I certainly have. It's good, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really insightful.
Did you see? Did you hear me? I do ask one question. So if you watch again,
I'm till
my
fifth episode.
shoulder, and yeah, but it's at a Justin Langer press conference when I asked how it is having Smith and Warner back in the team, and you can see my shoulder. That's my big starring moment.
I'm till I'm in the fifth episode. I was just watching it before the part you called. So I'm till the fifth. So what I found interesting, usually we see very strong captains from Australia, Ricky Ponting, Steve Waugh, and Morton. Here, the cultural change or the team direction was pretty much led by Justin Langer. Is this genuine switch, or is this just a coincidence, or the characters Tim Payne and Justin Langer, the characters they are?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. There was obviously there had to be a big change, and there have been a lot of changes. Not just obviously at the time there were changes in the player personnel, Tim Payne coming in and captaining, and the thing about Tim Payne is, in a way, why he was the right person to do it. You know, a year earlier he was about to end his career. He already had a job lined up with Kookaburra. He was going to finish his professional career, and then he got, through a series of chance, really, the opportunity to come back into the Australian team. And then the next thing, all of this happens and he's the captain, and that was so far from where he thought he would be just a short time before. So I think that probably gave him a really good perspective just on cricket. He in a way, not been in this bubble of international cricket for the past, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, where that's all there was. He has a family. He was looking at life after cricket, all of that sort of stuff. So I think that gave him a good perspective. And he and Langer, Langer's a fascinating character. He's sort of this combination of still this hard-nosed, we're going to F and beat him, blah, blah, blah. And then also this Zen master, let's take off our shoes and do some earthing, and it's a really fascinating, I think, combination. And
In
the
the
two, go on.
sorry, in the documentary, you see that kind of conflict within him a lot of times.
Yeah, you do, and that for me was one of the most fascinating things of watching it. So he and Tim Payne have, I think, done a really good job in what they were given. They were given a very difficult situation, and they've obviously had other senior players buy into that. Pat Cummings is a very good example, I think, of someone who's really been a part of that. I hope these wind chimes aren't too loud for you. I don't know if you can hear
Yeah,
them.
it's all right. It's all right. It's all right.
But there have been changes at other levels as well in Cricket Australia, changes in top management, the management of their media, all of those kinds of things. And just in my own personal dealings with them, particularly in the past sort of 7 or 8 months, I reckon it's close to a year, it's been a lot better. And I don't know what it's like on the inside, but it's felt like there have been changes that are more than just about the Australian men's team, and just a bit of an understanding of some of the things that were happening that were just crass and just looked bad, and that even to us watching, I'll never forget when they wheeled out remember the fists, the 4-0 fists at the end of the matches in Australia. I mean, as they wheeled them out, I remember, I think I tweeted something at the time because I just looked at my colleagues and were like, really? Like, really? Do they have to do that? So I think those sorts of things are, sort of broad, but at the end of the day, the public facing side of it probably comes down more to Langer and Payne, and that they're setting by example and deciding what they want to be, what kind of message that they want to send out. And it's probably hard to balance that. How do we be hard-nosed and aggressive, compete to win, but also, make sure that we're good people and that we're projecting the sort of right kind of thing about us as people. So it's a challenge, I think, and it'll be an ongoing challenge too.
So again, with the documentary, it took me a little bit back to the incident of Cape Town. You talking about the culture, which was not right. So these three guys, the three Steve Smith, Warner, and Bancroft, do you feel that they were made to be a little bit, they paid price for other people's sort of mistakes? Because it's hard watching Steve Smith and all. In fact, all three guys was. I'm not a direct stakeholder, but it felt very hard watching the kind of stuff they had to endure. And ball tampering has been going on for, I don't know, 30, 40 years, and this is just all one incident. And what's your take on it?
I mean, I do agree ball tampering has, and lots of people got away with it. No, I actually think a lot of the world was a little bit like, wow, Australia's going a bit bananas over this, aren't they? What, the Prime Minister's commenting on it.
Yeah.
And people want them thrown to the wolves and all of this. Look, I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that they'd become less likable in the years, and it had felt like, they would talk about this line and I hated it every time I heard it, the crossing the line and headbutting the line and all that sort of stuff. And it was like, oh, we're custodians of this line. We decide where it is. And basically anything we do is on the right side. But, we'll decide what's on the wrong side for you guys. I think that was how a lot of people were starting to feel about the Australian team, and just perhaps not liking them so much. And there's a certain amount of that whole "we don't do that" sort of thing that I think probably existed in Australian culture. Yeah, we'll be hard and we'll be fair, but we wouldn't stoop to that. And the fact it was so blatant, the fact that they lied about what they used, that we still don't know a lot of stuff. We still don't, I don't think, really know who knew what and who said what in a lot of ways. It was not handled very well at the time. And I think maybe all the stuff that had gone on before just meant people let loose on them and were able to say, yeah, we knew it, they weren't good guys, all that sort of thing. And some of it probably was just disproportionate, I think, as well. And they'd been set up, when you talk about mistakes of others, when you talk about that culture of Cricket Australia, that there was that didn't occur in a vacuum. What happened? It occurred in an organisational culture that was on many different levels. I think was basically formed a petri dish where all of this kind of festered and then came out in that incident. But I think, it's changed a lot now. I think a lot of it, certainly in Australia, even in England in the Ashes last year, there was booing all the way through, but particularly for Smith, people he won them over a little bit, certainly some parts of the audience. And I think in Australia, there's been a fair bit of forgiveness now. And I think that documentary will probably help things as well in some ways. Although I do think that they brushed over Sandpaper Gate a bit too much. I think that was dealt with a bit too quickly and just not really given the weight that, but then, the whole thing is sort of being allowed by Cricket Australia to be made. So they're obviously going to have a fair bit of say about something like that and how much time it's given.
The documentary actually helped the team become a little more, not change their behavior, because there are a couple of moments where Justin Langer comes, he wants to let loose and he looks at the camera, looks away and just walks. I noticed that a little bit in the documentary.
Look, probably maybe a little bit, particularly in this. But the cameraman Doc has been around and worked for Cricket Australia for probably about 8 years, and he left Cricket Australia but then got the opportunity to come back maybe 7 years. So the players knew him and he was just around all the time. And I think that what happens is, like with a lot of reality TV, you're really conscious of it at first, but once someone's part of the furniture, you perhaps become less so. So it's impossible to say how much it may or may not have impacted things. But yeah, Doc was certainly just in and amongst it as part of the furniture for a time before he started making the documentary, and then even more so during it. So it's a great credit to what he was able to do and capture throughout the time he was filming.
Some routine questions now. Do you remember the first interview you did of a cricketer?
Now, you did warn me you were going to ask this. And all I reckon it was probably amateur cricketers out here in the Central West when I was doing local news. But professional cricketers, I actually reckon I went to Alice Springs to do a feature for Fox Sports. And they were playing a game up there. It was South Australia playing Queensland in Alice Springs, which is in the middle of the country. Tiny, 25,000 people in the town. And I can remember. I can remember on that interviewing Andrew Simons was there. There was Graham Manu, and I also remember interviewing a young guy who was originally from the Northern Territory but was playing for South Australia in Kane Richardson. So that was way back then when he was just sort of starting really and doing quite well. And obviously he's made the international scene and gone on to do to have a really good career. So that's probably the first professional interviews, I reckon, in the middle of the country, Alice Springs, underneath the McDonnell Ranges, interviewing some state players.
Who's your favorite cricketer, if I ask, in terms of interviewing, as an interview?
My favorite interview? I'll tell you.
You can name a few, if you want.
Look, most of them are really good. There's a lot of just really nice people who play and who I enjoy interviewing. I recently did one. I love interviewing Megan Shute. I did a piece on her recently just because she is so honest and open and just doesn't hold back, and that's quite refreshing too. Like, she genuinely is, and she's an incredibly interesting person. I really like interviewing her. Probably the interview I most enjoyed doing though was it was a very long one, and it occurred, basically it was doing it like this. I did a long read for ESPNCricinfo on Eoin Morgan about a bit over a year ago, and we couldn't arrange our schedules because he was playing and then he got married, and then I came to Australia, and so anyway we basically decided to do it like this. So I would sit pretty much here where I'm sitting now in my mum's backyard in the evening, and he would be at his home in England in the morning. We just set up a time and we'd sit and chat, and we did that, and then we went to Lord's once I got back, and we filmed an interview that was actually made into a series of videos and even a TV program, and all up for the videos and for the written piece. I think we ended up probably doing about 4 hours worth of interviewing. So it was a lot. He was very generous with his time, but it was so nice to have you sitting here with a cup of tea, and he'd be there, and so yeah, with that for me was because we talked about so much stuff, and he was brilliant, and I actually found that a really nice process, much more relaxed in a lot of ways than most interviews are, because it's very rare that if you get half an hour with a player, that's serious. I had half an hour with Pat Cummings when I did that piece. But for Eoin, all up, it was like about 4 hours. It was ridiculous. It's incredibly generous of him. So that was really enjoyable.
I've seen one interview of you with Misbah. Have you had a lot of interaction with Misbah when he is captain or as coach?
No, I haven't.
Or any other Pakistani players specifically?
Oh, absolutely. I've interviewed, because I've covered Pakistan quite a bit, and done interviews with loads of them, from Mohammad Amir to Azhar Ali, Shah Massoud. I did I really enjoyed doing a piece on Asad Shafiq, who I really, really like, and I sat down with him and we did a really nice interview. So yeah, I've interviewed a bunch of the Pakistan players at various times, and they've been super, really good. Misbah's very Misbah, and it's like in press conferences, I always used to just sit there with a smile in Misbah press conferences, because he has an incredible talent that some politicians share. He's able to use an awful lot of words to say nothing. It's incredible. You get to the end of it and go, oh, what did he just say there? It's almost like he hypnotizes you, and then you're like, what did he say? I'm not sure, but it was a 5-minute answer, and I'm not quite sure what we got out of it. So
maybe that's how he remained captain for Pakistan for so long. That's the secret, I guess.
Exactly, and I understand that's part of the environment that he comes from. So, but he was great. I mean, I loved it. That summer when Misbah and Yunus Khan in particular in England, the summer of the push-ups, and that was great. I loved that series, and he and Yunus were really brilliantly entertaining. I thought they were magnificent. That was one of the that'd be my top sort of series that I've covered. I enjoyed that a lot. So yeah, I love watching Misbah anyway, but it's great in a press conference, because you'd never want to take him on in poker, would you? You'd never want to take him on in poker. You'd never get past that poker face.
So they'll be back in, hopefully, if cricket life resumes basically back in England, maybe July, maybe later. So you might be interviewing him again. So thank you again. That's the end of my question. Thank you very much for your time, and hopefully we'll see you in PSL. We had Aaron Holland this year, and hopefully next year in Pakistan. I would love to come to Pakistan. Like I said, I've got friends there, and I've heard so many wonderful things about Pakistan. I'm a big fan of spicy food, which always really helps. Get lots of it.
Yes, absolutely. I would really love. I'm so pleased that cricket is coming back to Pakistan, aside from what's happening now. But it's great that cricket is coming back to Pakistan, because they're some of the funniest and most entertaining fans on Twitter as well. And I've been really lucky to have some great interactions with with Pakistan Twitter. There's some really funny ones. They've got a great sense of humor. Really funny, some of them. Make me laugh. So, yeah, you know, hopefully one day I would absolutely love to come to Pakistan. And if I do, then I'll come and visit you and your family and we can have a cup of tea.
Absolutely. And spicy food.
And spicy food. I'm all down with that.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time, and stay safe, and hopefully see you back in cricket very soon.
Same to you. Wash your hands, keep safe, keep isolating, do all the right things.
Thank you.